Good evening to you both, and let's begin with round two of the Alberta Next town halls.
So let's just move forward with the referendum on independence, force that constitution open, and see where those talks take us.
I hate to see what this province is becoming. We sound like bratty children. We're getting a bad deal.
A sampling of comments to the Alberta Next panel in the Edmonton area Wednesday evening. The town halls launched to address concerns of Albertans over the federal Liberal election win, pushing some to actively seek separation. Laurie, night one in Red Deer resulted in a friendly reception for the Premier, for the panel, a lot of support for the government's Alberta First push. Surprised at all Danielle Smith would face a degree of criticism, even anger, one day later in Edmonton.
Well, I have to say there was some anger directed toward her from the more independence-minded folks as well in Red Deer. There were also people who were critical of the process in Red Deer. So it wasn't the first time that she got criticism. What was different last night, I think, was in part that people who watched or heard about what happened in the first town hall were motivated to come out, and they were pretty passionate. I was also struck by the fact that I think the loudest applause, just applause that I heard, no booze mixed in with it, was somebody said that they were an Albertan and a Canadian first. And that's, heartening in the sense that there are people there that really do want to work things out within Canada. What's problematic is that what they want for that relationship with Canada is different for very many of the people that are there. They're looking for a different set of arrangements as an Albertan who is part of Canada.
Ray, the voices of critical, frustrated Albertans are being heard, along with those who support Smith government anti-Ottawa policy and those pushing separation. Is that maybe not a sign that the Alberta Next town halls are an opportunity for all to be heard?
Yeah, I think you can look at it that way. What I noticed was she's set up her own little panel with, I think there's 15 people on it, and she handpicks them all, and she's going to still chair that. That doesn't make any sense. She's the Premier. She has a cabinet. Why waste taxpayers' money doing it? So I think the statement that I think about from her, what she says, and I'm quoting, it's not so much the West wants in, it's the West wants Ottawa out of its hair. How ridiculous can you be making a statement like that?
All right. Next up, we heard from NDP leader Naheed Nenshi off the top on his party's initiative to consult with Albertans, something the New Democrats are calling the Better Together Summer. Ray, I'll start with you first this time. How hard pressed will they be to generate traction when Danielle Smith's Alberta Next town halls are generating as much attention as they are, sucking up the oxygen in the room?
Well, I don't believe that. Nenshi is going around the province. The MPs are going around the province. That's what people expect. When you're elected, you get out and see the people, and you don't make a big political thing about it. And he's just saying, we're going to take our caucus and we're going to go around the province, and it doesn't cost the taxpayers any money. They get a chance to talk to all the NDP caucus. So I think it's a wise move on his part.
Laurie, by the NDP hitting the road, holding town halls of their own, taking a pro-Canada approach to consultation, how much of an opportunity is that for Naheed Nenshi as leader, and how does he harness that with any impact?
Well, the first thing is, as he's doing this, he's connecting with Albertans. And we know, even from what we've seen in the town halls so far, there is disagreement and about what the government is doing in a number of policy areas, including in rural Alberta, around things like healthcare, coal mining in the eastern slopes, and so forth. We saw Danielle Smith booed at a meeting that was discussing that coal mining recently, and I think there's an opportunity here for the NDP to get out, listen to those people, try to encapsulate the concerns that they have. And if both the response from Albertans and the response given, the the voice, if you like, the encapsulation of the concerns that are being raised. If that's effective, then there could be a greater connection between the NDP and some folks in rural Alberta, or urban Alberta, as we sometimes call it, and there could be room for them to pick up support.
Ray, from a party level, there have been concerns raised in the wake of the spring sitting over Naheed Nenetshi's leadership, the degree of impact he's having. Now that he's been sworn in as an actual MLA, how likely are those perceptions to change?
Well, I think they will change because he'll be in the legislature. He will be asking questions that haven't been there as leader of the opposition. And so he'll be very much in the news and people will see him. He's a very able, bright guy. And now that they see him in action, I think it will play to the betterment of the NDP right across the province. So I'm expecting he'll do very well now that he's in the legislature.
Laurie, let me quickly ask you about that as well. Now that he's sworn in this week, he is now an MLA. How much of a difference will that make instead of sitting on the sidelines?
It will make some difference because he can actually engage in the legislature, but the legislature isn't sitting right now. I think what's happening with these Alberta Next panel discussions is every time there's an Alberta Next panel and discussion about what happened at that panel, there's an opportunity for Naheed Nenetshi to speak into that and to provide an alternative. There's also an opportunity for Albertans to speak about what they want to see done. In the past, we've seen opposition parties in Alberta most successful when they don't go beyond just criticizing the government to suggesting what they would do better.
The Prime Minister meeting with Indigenous leaders today and during opening remarks promised to prioritize First Nations when it comes to major infrastructure projects.
This is the first federal legislation to put Indigenous economic growth at its core. We now have the opportunity to realize it.
Mark Carney promised to hold the summit after chiefs said their rights were not respected by the rush to push Bill C-5 through Parliament last month. The legislation allows Cabinet to quickly approve big industrial projects like pipelines by sidestepping existing laws. Laurie, what's riding on the reception Mark Carney received from First Nations leader? The degree of unity emerging from these summit meetings?
It's, I think, quite significant. As we know, many of the projects that he's talking about will have to get Indigenous support and potentially economic involvement as well. And he has needlessly raised questions about whether he is respectful and consultative, something that could have been avoided had he done more consultation as he put the legislation together. So there's an opportunity, perhaps later than ideal, but there's now an opportunity for him to try to reach out and provide reassurances, procedures, processes, et cetera, to ensure there's adequate consultation and consideration of Indigenous perspective.
Ray, how much of a leadership test do you expect this to be for Mark Carney?
Well, I think it's always going to be difficult, when you're dealing with very issues that you can go the wrong way very quickly. I think, and to give him credit, I think he realized that, and now he's made an effort, and it seems to be working to meet and discuss the major issues with Indigenous people. So I'm hopeful that he continues with this, and I'm hopeful that something positive will come out of it, because we don't need to have this as, Indigenous people across Canada, upset with him. So I'm hopeful that he's got the idea that he has to do this, and he seems to be moving in that direction. So let's wait and see.
Laurie, a lot of focus here on the Carney government's relations with First Nations, but how much of the weight of this conversation do you see transferring over to the provinces?
Well, of course, there are concerns raised within various provinces. There are aligned interests in some cases and opposed interests in some cases. There has been a fair bit of contention between Indigenous peoples and leaders in Alberta and the government, the Alberta government. These are not easy things to manage. It's better not to sort of set them on the wrong path at the start, to consider and consult beforehand rather than to try to repair. Not impossible to bring things back once damage has been done, but it certainly makes the job much more difficult. And it's a real challenge to build a coalition that includes all of the different interests, even within Indigenous communities, never mind between the Indigenous communities and provinces.
Yep, and it'll be interesting to see when the premiers meet with the PM in Ontario next week how dominant a discussion Indigenous relations turns out to be. For us, one more topic. That's the changing dynamics of the federal by-election in Alberta, where Pierre Poilievre hopes to win back a seat. More than 50 candidates are now registered in the riding of Battle River Crowfoot, including dozens of independents. The growing list stems from a coordinated effort by an electoral reform group aiming to break records during this by-election. Poilievre lost his Ottawa area seat in the spring, a riding where 91 candidates were registered. Ray, this group goes by the name the Longest Ballot Committee. As I just mentioned, they're aiming to break records, and that's by registering hundreds of independent candidates. How do you see this changing the dynamics of the by-election here in Alberta?
Well, I don't think it'll have a big impact, but it will. They're sending a message, the 50 people will be running, and that's anarchy to begin with. But they're trying to send a message that they want more flexibility in terms of the number of parties that can run, and not just the single one. So they do have a message that's worth talking about, but it's not the election with 50 people running. I expect he'll still win, but it's sending a message to him, too, that we're not totally happy with this.
Laurie, is this pushing the bounds? What kind of place or role does this even have in the electoral democratic process?
Well, it's meant to be something that questions or promotes democracy, a better democratic system, and might actually have the effect in cases like this of interfering with meaningful engagement in the electoral process. Some might be deterred by this. Democracy is not about how much it costs, but we're hearing a couple $1 million will be put into this. It's very expensive to produce those long ballots, as we saw in the riding that Pierre Poilievre lost in Ottawa, in Carleton. Difficult to find Pierre Poilievre's name on that huge ballot. I don't know if anybody saw anyone actually holding the entire ballot, but it's huge. It's expensive. It makes it more difficult for people to actually meaningfully engage in debates, to reach out to candidates. We're hearing complaints not just from Pierre Poilievre about this. We're also hearing from Bonnie Critchley, who's gotten a lot of attention on social media and mainstream media with her challenges of Pierre Poilievre, the cost involved, whether or not Pierre Poilievre knows anything about the riding, can adequately represent the riding. She's criticized his record. I think those kinds of questions and discussions could enrich the democratic process. But with so many candidates in the process, it actually arguably undermines the ability to participate democratically. I just want to also point out that in the Carleton election, in the general election, none of the candidates got more than 57 votes. So they didn't really make a difference in terms of the outcome. It was strong candidates that challenged Pierre Poilievre that made the difference. And it makes it more difficult for those less well-known, less well-funded candidates to make a difference in a by-election like this.
All right. On that note, we'll have to leave it there for time. Good to see you both. Thank you kindly.
Thank
you,
you,
Michael.